Welcome to the Fit Drivers Podcast, sponsored by PrePass. Only PrePass provides way station, bypass, and integrated electronic toll payment services, saving you time, fuel, and money while improving safety and efficiency in trucking. Visit prepass.com for details. Okay, welcome everybody to another Fit Drivers Podcast. And as I always say, this wouldn't happen if it isn't for the good folks at PrePass to sponsor me. And I'm really excited today about my guest. Really doesn't need much of an introduction. Anybody in transportation knows the name Ellen. So that's what I'm going to switch to. I'm just going to call you Ellen, because everybody knows Ellen when it says transportation. So Ellen, thank you so much for coming on.
It's good to see you, Bob. It's been a while. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. This will be fun.
Well, thank you. And I need to give you credit for this because, as you and I always say, we always try to be persistent, but politely always nudging people about the critical issues of driver health, right? And you were kind enough several years ago to introduce me to Sharon at FMCSA. And that got the ball rolling and got me in communication with them to really dig down and get the real numbers from them. And once I did that, and they pretty much came out, what we're going to talk about today, you and I have always known, but could never get them officially. And so that therefore launched me the opportunity to go to PrePass, and they loved the idea. And so I've been very fortunate for them to be my sponsor for the last year and a half and had a lot of great guests on. And so now to have you on, this is really great because you are a champion as well in so many other areas in what you've done. And so I think this is a great addition that you can really add your expertise. And really the idea of me doing these, just trying to bring more awareness how critical these health issues are, right? And trying to get more carriers, more people involved to really do something and add to the level of education. So, but first I want to ask you, so how's retirement?
Wow. It's kind of, I'll tell you the biggest change. The biggest change is I can buy fresh fruits and vegetables because I couldn't do that before because I was always traveling. So, and the other biggest change is if I need to mow my lawn or, do something around the house. And if I don't feel like it that day, I don't have to. Where before I was like, oh, I have to get this done. I'll be back on, traveling again. So it's really nice. I love it. I have 3 granddaughters and I get to spend time with them. I saw them last night. And as you know, I also fly. So in fact, yesterday I took a friend up and we went flying, just burning holes in the sky. So that's always fun.
Wow. Well, for those of you, I want to talk a little bit about Ellen's background. She's an internationally recognized speaker on gender diversity for women working in non-traditional careers in transportation. She's also been invited to speak at audiences in Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, France, Mexico, and Canada, and also, of course, throughout the United States. And she's been on various different news networks, Fox Business News, Bloomberg, all those. So, but Ellen, did you get to fly to all those places yourself?
No, I went commercially. In fact, I was in Australia. I spoke at the Transport Women Australia conference, and I got back in June. And 35 hours, Bob, 35 hours each way is, yeah, that I don't recommend. But you know what? I used a whole bunch of points and a whole bunch of coupons and credits, and I got upgraded so that I had the seats. So yeah, it's not easy to get to Australia. I can tell you that.
So I want to ask you, because I've had a couple companies from Australia reach out to me. The regs are different there. They have the same health problems, but the regulations are a little different there. So how was your talk received? What did you feel about how it was received?
So in the past, I've been there, I think 6 or 7 times now. And in the past, I always talked about how to get more women in the industry. This time, the conference was called Living the Dream, and they actually had me speak for 90 minutes, believe it or not, about, creating women in trucking and building an association that has members all over the world. But in the past, when I spoke about how to get more women in the industry, and they've been wonderful. They will take me on tours of trucking companies, truck driving schools. I learned a lot, and it is different in a couple ways. In one way, lots more men, because of the outback and the trains, the heavy equipment. But the other thing, and I really think this makes sense, New Zealand and Australia have like a graduated, you start out with a straight truck, a certain weight, and then you
Yeah.
can move into a higher weight, and then you move into articulated vehicles. But it's almost like a graduated driver's license, and it just makes so much sense. We put people right into a tractor trailer, after 3 weeks of training, and I like the fact that you kind of work your way in, but Australia is a lot different because of the outback in the West. So that makes it,
Yes.
they don't have the truck stops that we have. They don't have the amenities that we have. In fact, we visited some truck stops, and it's not at all as nice as what we have here.
Right. But I too was educated about that, and I like the graduated steps, right, on how they advance from one piece of equipment to the other. And unfortunately, we don't do that here, which leads me to talk about, the numbers that I was able to gather from the FMCSA, and pretty much it's 57 some percent of those CDL holders out there, Ellen, operate on a short-term card, and we know what that means, right? That because of health issues, 1 year is right away recognized as hypertensive, pre-diabetic, sleep deprivation, and we just don't do enough in the beginning, like you were talking about. We get them in there, take them through a crash course, and don't really talk about how to live out there on the road and make better choices. So, my question to you is based on your experience and so forth. I'm sure these numbers don't surprise you. Over the years, you see it getting any better? I mean, you hear more carriers. Are they trying to be more sympathetic to that, or is it still the same old churn and burn?
I, you've been a voice for this for many, many years, and you have really pushed companies to start looking at the data. I mean, in the past, nobody knew that half their drivers or over half the drivers didn't have a 2-year card. They didn't even look at that data, just like they didn't look at what percentage of their drivers were female. So it's really creating awareness. But the other thing that I don't think they realize is the ROI. And you've talked about this many times. Do you want to lose a driver, a good, safe driver, because they can't pass their physical? So it's proving the ROI. And for me at Women in Trucking, I had to prove that what women bring to the industry, especially as drivers, the being risk averse, and being good with paperwork and customers and things like that. So they all want to see data. They want to see, how is this going to affect my bottom line? And as over the years, you've gotten more and more of that data, but I still, Bob, I'm sorry, but I still don't see. And I think that this industry still has to realize that maybe the numbers, the retention numbers for drivers with less than a 2-year card, um, you know, don't make up for the churn. I mean, boy, when I see research, Dr. Stephen Burks did research on, it's just easier to hire new drivers than it is to get them home. I mean, think about that. I mean, getting them healthy, to me, would make more sense. So I think it boils down to, does this industry really care about the person behind that seat, or the behind the wheel?
Yep, you're exactly right, and which leads me into a great segment, because I'm working with our friends, Carlene, for the next Women in Trucking event. I've got some major healthcare companies, providers, and so forth that I'm working on putting this area together to bring them in, to bring more awareness and do some testing and so forth. And one of the reasons being is that I've learned from being at Women in Trucking, because they are more engaged. And I wanted you to talk about your statistics, your findings about the safety of female drivers, right? The compliancy, like you said, the paperwork, just all the little things that really make up a big difference. So could you speak to that?
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for coming to the Accelerate conference. I'll see you there this year. But you'll see that female executives, and I think of Joyce Brenny hiring a nurse, her daughter. for their drivers. And Sherry Broombaugh Garner,
Yeah.
look at her. She has made it her mission to be healthy. So I see a lot of these female CEOs walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So kudos to them. But as far as female drivers, I think women are more in touch with their bodies, but I also think they suffer the same obesity, diabetes, same issues as men. But what I will say is what women bring to the table, and I do have this data. The American Transportation Research Institute found that male commercial drivers were 14% more likely to be involved in a crash than female commercial drivers. And that's because women take fewer risks. We're more risk averse. And it's the amygdala up here that's the fear factor that holds us from taking more risks. And it's more estrogen instead of testosterone. So we're more team oriented and collaborative. But also, and I can't quantify this, but anecdotally, carriers will tell me that typically their female drivers are better with customers, better with paperwork, better with the equipment. And truck driving schools tell me over and over again that female drivers are easier to train. Now, I'm not saying this for everyone,
Right.
and I know that. But I'm just repeating what companies and schools are telling me. And so when I started Women in Trucking in 2007, everyone was like, well, we need more drivers. So what can we do to tap into the other half of the population? Now, the biggest change I've seen over the years, and that's because I can bring data, is we see the value women bring to this industry, whether it's in the boardroom as CEOs or in the driver's seat. We see the value of what women bring to the industry. And now we want to learn more about how to attract and retain more female drivers. So that's the biggest change. It's the attitude. And I think, with driver health, you just got to chip away, Bob. They're going to get.
Well, I feel like I'm trying to make a dent in that tree, chipping away at it, but it does take a lot of effort. And I know that the same things I'm finding, one particular carrier I did do have an experience with that I won't mention the name, but they gave me a handful of their drivers on temporary cards, and I did save out of that population 50% of them and got them to a longer term card from a 90-day that they would have lost. So I thought, well, gosh, they'll really want to be involved in this. And the answer I'm sure I'm going to give you, you're not surprised to hear. Well, Bob, I don't know if I want to spend the money to save them, and then they end up leaving me. And I said, well, that sounds like a whole other set of problems that maybe you should consider looking into, right? I mean, I'm sure you've heard this as well. I mean, there's other issues going on there. If they want to leave you and you help save their livelihood, why would they not want to stay with you unless there's some other circumstances?
Many years ago when I worked for a very large carrier, and they were ahead of the game on sleep apnea, and they tested drivers for sleep apnea in their trucks, put the equipment in their trucks, gave them the equipment free. They saw the ROI. They saw how their driver health improved. And I feel that it was a retention issue because drivers knew I have to stay with this company because they're providing me with a sleep apnea machine. And if I go to that company, I won't have that. So I
Right.
think once companies start seeing that, well, if you treat your drivers and help accommodate, their health issues, then it shows that you shouldn't leave or because we care.
Right, right. And so that brings me to something else then about that. And I always ask all the professionals that come on is that what there is more we should be doing, right, in orientation and in safety means that we could do. One of the things that I'm trying to get companies to understand, engage in, we all know that they really push the pre-trip check, right? When you stop, do the pre-trip. So I'm trying to get them to understand, take it one more step, do a pre-trip fridge check, simple, something simple, right? Because we know in the life of a driver, they're going to get stuck today out there somewhere. Doesn't have to always be weather, could be traffic, could be construction, right? They're sitting there, and then they don't have a good source to reach for a choice, they make a bad one, right? And so trying to get them just the simple things about to help them understand the value in making sure they're putting the right kind of fuel in their tank, right?
Well, and I know that you've done competitions. I know that it takes peer pressure a lot of times to make those lifestyle changes. And the other thing I've also learned, Bob, and I'm sure you know this, is that a lot of times for men, and not just for men, but women too, but for men, I've heard it takes a life changing realization. And for it could be, oh, I have a grandchild and I want to live to watch my grandchild grow up, or maybe they have a health risk, a near miss, maybe a stroke or whatever that wakes them up. And how do we get to them before something negative, prompts them to create change in their lives? And it's hard. It really is. I can tell you, it's hard to make. It's a cultural change.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I can tell you that from my experience that whenever a driver comes up to me and said, "Hey, Bob, I need some help. I want to do something." My first question always to them, "Why today? Driver, why did you decide today's the day?" And 9 times out of 10, it's just what you said. It's somebody at home, extension of the family that's worried about them, and they're, "Are you going to be around, Dad? Hey, Granddad, are you going to be here to walk me down?" All those things that tug on them, that they want to make a change. We all know we should be taking care of ourselves personally, but in the driver population, it always seems like it's the family, right? And that
I, I, I want to
sticks
say
out.
something else. I want to say something else, Bob, and I have said this for years. So you're in airplanes a lot. I'm in airplanes a lot. Rarely do you see an overweight pilot. Okay. But think about this. The pilots are eating in airports. They're on the run. They have terrible schedules. They're away from their families. What's the big difference? And in my opinion, it's the respect that we show for pilots. And we're not we're not there yet with the trucking population. How do we get drivers to feel like they are wonderful and very important? And I think drivers, when you feel bad about your job or about what you're doing, you don't feel good about what you're eating or drinking or exercising. We need to make sure that drivers feel better about themselves, because I don't see much difference between drivers and pilots when it comes to food options, exercise, sleep, that sort of thing.
You're exactly right, and I've had this conversation. And anytime I'm on the airplane and I walk by the cockpit and they're standing up there and they're talking, I always make sure I make a comment that it's good to see that they're in shape, and that I even watch what they bring on the plane to eat.
Yeah.
And very rarely do I see junk, right? I mean, they've got water and some nuts and that kind of thing, right? And so, but you're exactly right. In fact, I just got a call yesterday. I know you know Henry Albert,
Hmm.
and he called me from a truck stop, and he's sitting at the counter. "Bob, I had to call you, and I got to introduce you to this fella. He's a driver." And of course, the guy commented to Henry because Henry wears a shirt and tie to work every day,
Hmm.
as you know. And the guy didn't believe at first he was a truck driver. And so he introduced me to this fella because he is an advocate fitness guy, and he wants to come up with ideas about equipment. He come up with an idea. So anyway, Henry got me on the phone with him, and Henry does this quite often, which I'm very grateful, and talking to him. And so, we got into conversation, and the gentleman said he wanted to come up with some equipment because he sees so many drivers, fellow drivers, they're in such horrible shape that they don't take the time. So I'm very excited also too. I just got the word yesterday from the gentleman I worked with, a Freightliner, and he gave me the okay to bring back the fit system, the exercise stuff, to start making it
Hmm.
available for the trucks. Turned out that I didn't know this, but accidentally they're still installing the clips into those cascaded Freightliners. So there's thousands of trucks out there that can be equipped with the workout, right?
Wow.
So I'm excited about that. So hopefully that'll encourage, but and lead them into a way of making another step. So, but if you had to pick one simple, easy step, Ellen, that for those who are listening, safety directors, HR people listening, even drivers, that you would recommend that here's an easy first step to take to help get your drivers educated. I mean, what would that be? What, if it was up to you, what would you do?
Well, we incentivize drivers to make their fuel mileage better. We incentivize drivers for safety. what if they incentivized drivers for getting fit, whether that's lowering blood pressure or, diabetes, or, because we all need incentives. And if we're incentivizing them, maybe a financial, and maybe you've done this with some carriers, Bob, but I mean, I know carriers that you've worked with where they'll pay drivers to lose weight.
Right.
But some kind of incentive, and then put it on a big wall. You've got your safety awards up there, you've got your safe driving awards. What about, hey, this person went from a 90-day card to a 6-month card. Yay, let's celebrate.
Right. Well, I agree. And I tell you that these competitions I've done the last few years have really gotten a lot of attention. And I'm really appreciative of Women in Trucking this year. They're really going to help me with of course, the 22 for 22 push campaign. We're going to have on video Sarah Lee. You probably know Sarah Lee from Waypoint.
Yep.
She's going to shoot her video, and this year they're going to hold the 22 for 22 in the auditorium into the trade show floor so more people can participate and raise more money. But those really do help bring awareness to drivers, and been so lucky. I got some great people behind it, Great Dane and Alcoa, and of course all those folks in the Women in Trucking. So I'm happy about that. I'm glad you're going to be there this year. I keep telling you, last few years I was cheating on my group because I was there and you weren't there.
Well, I'm coming this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone and participating. And Bob, you keep that voice, keep being that voice out there, because eventually they're going to start. More and more companies will start listening, and even the FMCSA. I hate to say government intervention, hate that, don't want it. But if they can start getting more data out there and saying to carriers, look,
yes,
your safety record is negatively affected by how many of your drivers can't even pass a physical, and start shaming the carriers, and have those numbers out there saying, well, look at this company. I mean, they have 80% of their drivers have a 2-year physical, and this one, 30%. And I know it affects safety. It affects safety.
Yeah, absolutely. So another interesting tidbit, how you and I first met way back in 07, 08, is when I was opening up those clinics at truck stops. And I'm happy to say that I've been contacted by a new company. I entered into a consulting agreement with them, and we're going to try it again and go back at it again. So somebody told me the other day, said, well, Bob, you hang around long enough, you keep reinventing yourself and bringing these things back to life, maybe something will stick sooner or later. So that's the goal. I
certainly hope so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ellen. And I hope to see you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. And just keep being that voice, Bob.
Right on. Thank you. Bye-bye. Only Prepass provides way station, bypass, and integrated electronic toll payment services. Visit prepass.com for details.